Okay, welcome everybody to our transition talks today. Thanks for being here. We have Susie Estrada from our Utah State Board of Education. She's our family engagement specialist here to talk about the next chapter and just visit with us about strategies for engaging families and the importance of engaging families. So we're excited to have her and so grateful to you, Susie, for taking the time today. And we're going to turn it over to you.
Hello, and now I'm finding the Zoom updates. I can share my screen. Um, but I was speaking with Deanna right before everyone joined about how excited I am to be here, and especially uh, the I read chapter 4 too, and I'm just excited that we're talking about family engagement in a very aligned way. When I came to USBE 3 years ago, great conversations were happening, but family engagement was um, if you asked five people to describe it, it would be defined and described in five different ways. So I'm excited that we're aligning and all using the same language. I'm going to share my screen now. Can you all see everything okay? Okay. I was having tech issues, so I was a little nervous. Um, but before we get going, if you all could please do us a favor and sign in, it helps our bosses know that we're working, that when we do these things, people show up, they're invested. And then at the end, I'll ask you for a feedback survey to hopefully say that not only did you show up, but this was meaningful and we did a good job. So if you could please just sign in, just take a few more seconds here. And then I'm going to go to the next slide, but you can still continue completing it. Because I'm going to talk quite a bit for this next slide. So family engagement as a definition. So we are utilizing Dr. Karen Math's a definition that she uses mostly in the dual capacity framework, which if we wanted to go deep into that, we could do a few more sessions on just the dual capacity framework. But it's looking at, again, that alignment from school and community partnerships, supporting families to reach a shared goal and outcome. Ultimately, it comes down to this definition of a full, equal, and equitable partnership. Equitable being the key piece here. What do our families need when it comes to removing barriers to participation, to the success for their students, to them developing their capacity, their skills, and their awareness on different topics from child and adolescent development to what just post-secondary outcomes are and what's needed in that space. Every year, I meet with the HHS for one full day with their interns, and their interns are mostly in foster care, and that is really my way of getting feedback and information from the community from the student perspective. What is it that you wish that you had access to or that your families knew that would support you to be successful in that post-secondary space? And this year it was very loud and very clear. I wish my parents knew that it's not just about hard work. I need to go to college to do the one that I'm thinking of specifically. She wants to be a forensic scientist. No one of their parents is their message is, well, you don't have to go to college. If you work hard enough, like you can do it. You just have to work your way up. And she's like, no, Dad, I have to go. I have to go get a degree. So just building that awareness for families and building their skills when it comes to just like FAFSA or different components there, especially for our first generation families, which we'll dig into. And I am going to share just some stories about myself because when we talk about post-secondary outcomes, it's very personal for each of us, and it needs to be individualized because we all have different needs. So, for example, in my household, it was always communicated that I would graduate high school and I would pursue a higher education degree. So it wasn't about low expectations, but the barrier to access there was my mom had no idea what FAFSA was or what, even now I'm in a doctorate program, balancing the cultural norms of family, but then also wanting that definition of success. My daughter is a doctor now and works for the state. Like all of those things are cool without really knowing like the time and capacity that takes. So having that conversation with families, that goes into the rural context. Sometimes families are sharing that they don't want their student to become disconnected from their community or to leave their house and forget about them. That is the fear that families are sharing, right? So how can we help alleviate those fears by making things one attainable, but then also tying it back to how it's going to benefit their family and their community. It's not just, we want your kid to go to NYU and to never come back. No, they're going to get a degree. And this is how it's going to strengthen the community and the family, and then providing them like different options there and those information points. Um, so I want to share my positionality statement with you all, just for background on me, because we're going to talk about research. But again, this is a very personal experience and it needs to be individualized when we're working with families and with students. So I'm a first generation college graduate, first in my family to go to grad school, fumbling around and trying to figure it out. So I have two masters, and then I have a bachelor's and two minors in my bachelor's, and that always gets oohs and ahs, but it was a lot of fumbling around and I don't know what I'm doing. So I've taken all of these classes and paid a lot of money. How can I make it count? That's how I got my two minors. I would love to brag and say I wanted to learn all this information. It was good information, but it was accidental. Um, and then the blended family. So I grew up in a blended family, but then when I turned 15, my mom was a single mom. So having to balance her workload, my mom worked graveyard shifts. So because of that, she slept most of the day. She wasn't going to school events or school meetings because she was tired and she needed to work, 11 p.m. until, I don't know, very late the next day. I was already in school by the time she got home. Um, an 8 on the adverse childhood experiences scale. So for those of you that are not familiar with ACEs, the adverse childhood experiences scale, it is those experiences that are out of the norm typically for families, or hopefully for families. I say that because my hope is that children don't have trauma. But it's a scale of 1 to 10. So exposure to a family member or someone in the household that has a mental illness, incarcerated parent, abuse, physical, sexual, or emotional. There's 10 altogether. Of those, I'm an 8. So I carry those experiences with me again. And then first generation American. My mom came from El Salvador, my dad's Guatemalan, and I grew up in Southern California. In low income, we did not have a lot, but we had enough and we were happy for the most part, even with the name, still happy. So with all that said, again, if you all want to share anything in the chat about your experiences, the things that really mattered to you and the things that you knew as you were going through that K through 12 space, as far as I knew I wanted to be a teacher or I knew I wanted to go to college. Um, I wanted also center again the 8 on the ACEs scale for some of our students, especially some of our more difficult to reach students. Sometimes envisioning that future is the difficult step. So for me, while I knew that I wanted to graduate and go to college, I couldn't envision a career because I also couldn't envision myself past the age of like 20. I always thought like mid 20s was the end. Don't ask me why, I don't know. That was just my adolescent brain couldn't think past that point. And I share that to share that the way our lived experiences shape the way we view ourselves, others, and expectations and norms. Those are things that we carry daily. Um, Thinking about myself now in this position and in a doctorate program, it's like I'm talking about a different person than that adolescent, like a different, I could be talking about someone named, I don't know, Sabrina, that is separate from me, right? And then also just highlighting that life trajectories don't always follow a certain sequence or a certain like steps that could be considered universal. Sometimes people loop out, sometimes they follow things out of order, and that's okay. So again, key takeaway from this slide is really knowing that things need to be individualized and centering dignity. Because even our difficult to reach students, I did gang prevention. Let's circle back around, and if given the opportunity, they rise to meet high expectations when properly supported. Also, if anyone wants to stop and unmute at any point, we can definitely have a conversation. This should be a conversation. It should be collaborative. And if you haven't noticed, I love to talk. I'm gonna open the chat so I can see if people are putting stuff.
Yeah, Susie, I'm happy to read the chat if you'd like. Somebody offered some input here for me. This person said, growing up, my dad loved his job. My mom tolerated her job because she was good at it. Seeing that difference really hit hard for me, and I knew I wanted a career that I loved getting up for every day, and teaching has become that for me.
Thank you. I accidentally fell into teaching. I knew I wanted to work with kids, but didn't know what I wanted to do exactly. I thought psychology, and then I thought social work. And then I ran support groups for survivors of childhood abuse and decided, oh no, social work is too much for me. Takes a very special and different kind of heart. We've all got good hearts. My heart was not made for social work. And it's a great space. I think all of us come to education wanting, and there's actually research on this, especially if you've had certain lived experiences, that you want to be that adult for children that you needed. Actually have a sign that's packed up to go back to the office, but it's be the adult that you needed or wanted when you were a child. So I think that's the kind of heart that we all come into this space with. Right. So disengaged versus unengaged. I always want to say I'm not trying to romanticize any lifestyle, because I do talk about gang prevention. It was my first big passion in education, coming from the background that I come from. I had a lot of friends that were gang affiliated. Again, 8 on the ESA score. My home was not always the safest, but I was safe out with my friends that were often gang affiliated. So not trying to romanticize that life or that lifestyle, just trying to humanize it and say things aren't always how they present themselves. And that goes with family engagement, because sometimes we see families that aren't showing up and we think, or we might think, oh, they're not invested or they don't care. But in reality, they just might be juggling a lot of different priorities, a lot of different tasks that are being asked of them. Sometimes they're just uncomfortable in that space. So really looking at this as far as the continuum of parent and family engagement. First looking at the disengaged parent or family. While educational neglect is the possibility, it's not impossible, but it's very rare. So in 2024, only 1.6% of cases reported were actually child abuse because of educational neglect. So again, it could happen. It could be that a family doesn't care, but that is so rare and probably not the case for families, even when they might appear that way as they're showing up in your space. I always encourage professionals in schools to think about the way the families show up as a small snapshot of that family. And maybe that snapshot is the worst part of their day. So not making a judgment or assigning opportunity based on that small snapshot. And I use myself as an example. There was a mom that showed up to my program every single day and yelled at us. And then we were going to conduct a home visit, and I was not looking forward to it. Expected to get yelled at the home visit just like I did on campus, but it was the best home visit I've ever done. Learned a lot about the family, and she was a completely different person in that space, very loving. The house was full of love and support, pictures of the kids everywhere. The family project was a fish tank. It was very eye-opening for me and for my supervisor that went with me to think about just the way that we view people and that we hold them to certain expectations based on those like short 5 minutes that we have every day. And that's a human reaction. It's not judgment. It's just how can we make sure that we're going beyond that snapshot and approaching people with curiosity. So for some disengaged families, those who are unresponsive to school contact or who seldomly participate in school activities, it might quickly translate to those parents don't care, but could it be that potentially they are unengaged? So high-level family engagement challenges us to go one step further and view this disengagement as a data point. So in other words, what does the lack of participation or non-response to our surveys or feedback inquiries, what does that tell us? A non-response is still engagement. It's they're not engaging. Okay, why is that? Is it access? Is it that they don't understand the reason for this? What can we do to build that awareness? And as a state, we're doing that with our Indicator 8 parent involvement survey, looking at why is it that certain populations are not engaging with the survey period, before we can even dig into that parent involvement score. So again, first step is thinking about access and buy-in. No response or lack of engagement is still a data point, and it still can inform your practice and your strategies going forward. So we're going to break the possibilities into these two categories, disengaged and then unengaged. So the more common reasons for disengagement, lack of understanding or trust in the P through 12 system. There could also be conflicting messages that cause confusion or skepticism. So things that they see on social media versus things that their school is telling them versus what they're seeing on the news. It can make things confusing and overwhelming. And then misalignment between school practices and family expectations. So some things that are recommended here is that clear communication on how and why to engage with the school, and the benefits that come when they do attend, for example, an IEP meeting. This is important for you because or that transition conversation, post-secondary transition conversation. This is helpful to your family because, in really tying it into one of their goals. So again, in that rural context, what we often hear is, I don't want my child to, leave and forget their community, their culture. So tying it back into pursuing higher education allows them the opportunity to have a remote work job in like cybersecurity that pays really well. That's going to give the family more financial stability. It's going to strengthen that community. So bringing those things into the conversation helps families see, long term, they might be gone for 4 years if they do choose to go to a different university, but long term, they'll probably come home and then they're going to thrive. They're going to have more income, which is going to help the family, which is going to help the community. So having a conversation through that lens of that long-term gain for them and for their community. And then also removing barriers. So when we're having meetings or workshops or events, thinking about meals, childcare, flexible scheduling, rather than just deciding and expecting folks to come, it's thinking about, okay, if we're doing this in the evening, are we potentially adding something to their plate? What can we take off? So if you have any like title funds, for example, those can be used to help provide meals. We have one school, and I always forget what school. I'm so sorry, I'm bad at names. But most of so they said 90% of their funding goes towards paying for stipends to family engagement people, so professionals or parents that get paid a stipend to support that engagement work. And then they'll pay 100 to 200 maybe for meals. But they're planning it where it's, again, that parent liaison is a parent at the school. They're getting paid for their time, but they're also functioning as a cultural broker. So cultural broker is the community bridge between the school and the community. It's someone that the community trusts. They have a connection with other parents, and they can vouch for the school or for someone at the school. So for example, at the charter school that I was at, if families were hesitant to talk to me, there's one parent specifically that comes to mind that would go and engage with them first and say, no, you can talk to Susie, hopefully say good things and say that I'm helpful. So that way they're more comfortable with approaching me in the future. Also offering multiple different times, working on a parent schedule, but then especially those personal invitations. So inviting fathers by name is important. We know that oftentimes fathers are reporting that they're feeling left out or like they're not welcome, and the school is not a place for them. We've had families or fathers specifically share that when they do show up to certain events, that they feel uncomfortable because they're either ignored or people might look at them differently or treat them differently. And that's coming through the Fathers Coalition of Utah. Those are stories that we've gathered through them of that experience. So that explicit call out to families and to fathers saying, we want you here, you're important, is essential to get them to participate. And then the clear expectations on each member's role. So treating it like you're onboarding that family member, giving them their role, what the expectations are, the supports. And then realistically, ideally, and we're sharing this message across USBE and across partner organizations, all of these things are skills that are practiced from preschool and going forward. So that way, it's not the first time that they're hearing it. By the time they get to you all at the secondary level, it's something that they've already been practicing from day one, whenever that is that that child enrolls in school. So family engagement, the schools and these interactions function as charging stations. So again, going back to preschool, we're thinking about the future, the planning and discussing of post-secondary goals as the norm and just a practice at every level. I joke, I should say, that even if a student wants to be a dragon slayer or a princess, whatever that is, it's not our job to say, no, that's not a real goal. We have to think about something that's realistic. It's our job to say, okay, well, what are you going to need to be able to be a princess? What do dragon slayers do? And then trying to make those things into skills that you can develop. And hopefully, maybe, who knows, they'll decide not to be a princess and want to do something else, but you're already helping them with that skill of goal setting, practicing how to have those conversations, and then again, those skills that they can use later on in life. So chapter 4 of your readings discuss how parent involvement increases during transition. Yet nationally, we can observe, and this has happened too through different USBE projects. We had our Partnerships for Middle School Success, which came down through legislation. That project, national projects, national research shows that at the secondary level, family engagement declines. So, any guesses on why that might happen? Why families engage less at the secondary level? I can only see like 2 of you on the screen.
Susie, I was thinking sometimes when we hit transition, our parents have been told, okay, now it's the students' choices. Now it's their pick. And a lot of my parents are like, okay, I'm off the hook. And then we get a lot of that. But I also think they've been through it for so long that they become, I hesitate to say apathetic, but they've, I don't know, I think they feel like the power's not in their hands. I think they feel just like whatever at a certain point. So
Yeah, so family engagement, we center the student, right? It's interesting because we see 2 things happen when we talk about family engagement. We either forget about the student and focus only on the parents, or focus on only on the student and I'm saying that backwards. Focus on the student, forget about the parents, or focus on the parents and forget about the student. Instead of remembering both of them together, which I think is kind of funny. But I'm also easily amused, apparently. So, how do we center the student, but then make sure that everything that we do is informed by the family values, norms, expectations, and traditions? And then the second piece of what you shared is uh, also what we're finding. Oftentimes, parents will think that they're not needed or wanted. My child's older, they should be more independent, or I'm going to embarrass them. So that's where building, again, that awareness comes into play, but then also play comes into play. So, how can we develop those informal opportunities to develop those skills? Right now, we're developing 7 regional literacy nights, and they are the K through 3, but it's has a clear goal of building awareness and skills of families to support at-home learning with literacy, but then doing it in a way where it's engaging, it's entertaining, it's fun, and it's interwoven into the things that they're already doing. So when, for example, planning like a career day, we often invite partners to come in and present. But could we invite alumni, so older siblings, to come and present on what their experience has been like in higher ed, or the careers that they've explored and are engaged in? Can we invite a father that we know is doing something that the kids are interested in? Bringing in partners is great. It's not, like it's bad, but if you bring in somebody that the students will recognize or have a connection with, and it makes it more real for them, and families also feel recognized and are more excited. So engagement can look like those fun things that families can come and present on, even if it's just playing the guitar, or helping to host something, helping to lead a workshop, an after school something. And there are policies with background checks, but that's a different conversation. The point is to identify who your resources are in your community and how can we leverage those resources and make it fun and entertaining. This is a part, and I went into preschool and after school after being in K through 12 because I like to play. I don't think that stopped. I stopped trying to be a professional when I realized that putting energy into trying to be a serious person was taking away from the quality of my work. So I'd rather just be funny and goofy and weird, maybe potentially, but doing some good work. So the good work comes from where you find those pockets of joy for yourself. If you are having fun, your families are having fun. If your families are having fun, they're going to participate and engage. And then your students will also want to be engaged as well. It really comes down to having a good time. And if you can be comfortable being silly, I promise it goes a long way. And I did gang prevention. So I can say all kids appreciate a little silly and a little goofy to engage with the K through 12 space.
Susie, there was one more response to your question in the chat. And this person said personality clashes. And I think sometimes we also see like what a student wants for their post-secondary plan might not be the same as what the parent wants, right? So I don't know if this person wants to expand at all, but they said personality clashes as potentially a barrier to getting students more or families more engaged.
Yeah. I have lost the chat, but if whoever shared that, if you wanted to share a little bit more, you do not have to. And I can't even call you out because I don't know where the chat is. So you are safe. Personality clashes. I mean, 100%. I shared the example of that student with that was doing an internship with DHHS. Parents did not want them to go into higher ed. They didn't see the purpose of it. It was very much like if you just work hard enough, you can do forensic science. And I'll share this story with my mom. I love my mom, but my mom is she's difficult, very grumpy cat. She's also, and just to give context on her, she grew up with a lot of trauma herself. Her father's, was, alcoholic, experienced domestic violence, and then immigrated from El Salvador right after the Civil War in El Salvador. So if you know anything about the Civil War in El Salvador, it was very traumatic, a lot of things to carry. So my mom is very skeptical of all things, even to like, she wants to send money for Christmas. She's in California, I'm in Utah. That is a whole ordeal about what is the safest way to do it. So very skeptical about all things. Wanted me to go into higher ed, wanted me to get a college education. But for the FAFSA, I could not convince her to give me her information to complete the FAFSA. And I gave up because it was a fight. I remember crying. It was a very difficult time. And then finally at school, one of my teachers asked me why I hadn't completed anything. It was a small learning community within the high school. So they tracked what we were doing, college applications and FAFSA. And I had to say, my mom won't give me the information. She thinks it's a scam. So she's not going to give it to me, and I have no money for school. That teacher had to, well, they didn't have to. They could have just left it at that. But they decided to call my mom, make sure that there was someone that spoke Spanish, spoke to her in Spanish, had a long conversation. And my mom's she's more chatty than I am probably. And explained to her what the FAFSA is, what the process is. It's a secure process. If you want Susie to go, this is an essential piece. Unless you have money. No, you don't have money. Okay, then this is the only option. So had to really get to her level, break things down, took the time, as long as that took, to be able to get her to understand this wasn't a scam and it was necessary. And I share that because those conflicting personalities, me and my mom, we still go 8 on the ACE scale. She's about 3 of them. So, so she is a difficult personality, and it was still done. It came through that family engagement piece with the school, someone that was willing to reach out and to have the patience to explain all of that to my mom and take the time. So sometimes that student and parent piece The school comes in and functions as a liaison and say, hey, your kid wants to be a dragon slayer. I know that you don't want them to be. It's a dangerous job. But maybe we can just focus on right now what they need to do. And then, by the time that they graduate, they might have changed their mind. They'll probably change their mind. We'll explore some other options. But right now, what can we do that, maybe we can make this something that will make you feel better? So having that conversation, Dragon Slayer, okay, you don't like it, it's not safe. But you want them to be a doctor, well, they're going to have to probably do medical work if they're a dragon slayer. So like maybe we can work on some of those skills. And that's a very silly extreme example, of course, but just like finding those connections to something that the family wants or something that they see and can understand and relate to, and connect back to something that means something to them. Again, you're not convincing the family or telling them that they're wrong. You're just functioning as a liaison to see where can we meet in the middle so that we can move forward. I'm not going to change your mind. We're not going to change the student's mind. No one's here to change anyone's mind. We're just here to work forward and make it through the day to the next day and, evolve and grow. And these goals will probably change too. Does that help at all? I feel like I said a lot of words and Dragon Slayer maybe too many times. I still can't see the chat. So if anyone can tell me if there's anything in the chat. All right.
You're good to go, Susie. I'm monitoring for you, so I'll let you know.
Thank you.
Yep.
So again, for parents, it's building that awareness around the fact that students with disabilities whose parents expect them to go to post-secondary education or employment are also more likely to be positively engaged in high school and achieve more post-school outcomes than youth whose parents do not share that same optimism for their future. So for families, gang prevention, I never met a single family that said, I can't wait for my student to grow up and be unhealthy or unhappy or incarcerated, whatever the situation might be. I've never met a single family that wants that. And I go back to my friends back home, their first picture of their baby, the baby will be wearing their green colors, but then I've been able to see their kids grow up. They're 10, I think is the youngest, and they're on their honor roll and they're celebrating that. Never once have I seen a family that says, I can't wait for my kid to fail. So building awareness for families and saying, hey, just you communicating that you have these high expectations for them and that we want you to succeed and have a career and go to college, just even sharing that piece of information, the more encouraging and the more that you share with them that you have these expectations of them, the more likely that they'll be successful adults. That is already, if nothing, at minimum, planting a seed. But more likely encouraging families to really get excited and verbalize those things more at home. Dr. Epstein also does research on family engagement, and there's 6 types of parent involvement, and one of them is just communicating that expectation to their kids. It's how my mom engaged, just communicating again. You are going to graduate, you're going to go to college. This is the expectation. It was never a question of if it was a when you do. So the 4 core essential beliefs, and it's 3 of 4. I'm trying to be mindful of our time, so I'll go a little faster. Just that all families have dreams for their children and want what's best for them, that all families have the capacity to support their children's learning. Family and school staff are equal partners. The responsibility for cultivating and sustaining partnerships among school, home, and community rests primarily with school staff, especially school leaders. So that's removing barriers, but also just taking a step back. And I've had a family get out of their car and I thought they were going to hit me. So I'm not saying it's an easy job, but sometimes it is taking a step back and saying, wow, I'm really mad about that, but I need to cool down so I can reach out and make sure that that relationship is intact. Because at the end of the day, it's not about us or even the family. It comes down to the student. So for us to be able to support the student, we have to be in a space where we can advocate for the student or liaison for the student. Again, if the student has goals that maybe don't align with the family, and being again like that education piece for families so that they know it's not just about hard work. Your daughter wants to do forensic science, she's going to need a degree to be able to go into that career. And maybe I'm wrong, maybe you don't need a degree, but I think you need a degree. So relationships matter. Humans are biologically hardwired for interactions, for connection in some way, in some capacity. And that social connection is the greatest predictor of happiness and reduced stress. When we talk about attendance to whether it's meeting or just school in general, social connections are the biggest motivator for kids to go to school. I get to see the kid that I have a crush on or my best friend if I go to school. So I want to go to school because I have that connection. A teacher notices that I'm not here. That makes me feel special. I want to be here because I know that they care. And the same thing goes for families, which is where that personalized communication comes in again, that personalized contact and outreach. One of the strategies that I share with schools, especially when we're going over our indicator rate parent involvement data, parents are asking for increased frequency in communication. I know it's not doable to do it every day, but just cycling families out, one text message a day or every Friday when you have that extra block of time, calling a family and sharing some good news, funny news. The littles were always my favorite because they talked a lot. I knew too much gossip about their families, more than I needed to know, but they also said really funny things. So it was easy to share funny stories with families. But high schoolers are just as funny too. They're preschoolers with a driver's permit is the way that I always think about them because they're just as silly, sometimes a little egocentric or maybe a lot, but they're just as funny. So early engagement question statements. If you're looking for some questions or how to get a conversation started, these are some recommendations, and I think these slides are being shared out with you. We're also working on a disability toolkit that's geared more towards families, but it has some recommendations that you all can use as well. It's big picture disability toolkit, but there's post-secondary like conversation cards and things like that we're working on. Once that's finally ready, we'll let you all know and you can use that. I want to highlight here that second bullet point. So action started in language, it really does go a long way. I cannot emphasize that enough. So it communicates its expectations. I've seen adults really make or break kids' trajectories when they communicate in certain ways. That makes it so that students either feel empowered and like graduation is a possibility, or turn them the other way and say, oh, like I'm not going to do this. Like people don't have faith in me. So that action started language communicates, I know that you can, and I know that you will. And it helps to empower those students. We talked about father engagement. So again, the different benefits of father engagement. We won't spend too much time here, but just the benefits that come with that paternal figure. I do want to really look at this strength-based mindset. So this comes from Dr. Yoso's community cultural wealth model, and the different types of capital that people come into our spaces with. There's cultural capital, aspirational capital, all of these different components. I want to highlight resistance capital. So it's easier to understand if I use a preschool example of the kid that's throwing a tantrum and saying, no, that's not fair. That's resistance capital. So it's when people are able to advocate for themselves or to maintain something that they think is valuable through resistance. It's resistance is not bad. It can be self-advocacy. So that student that maybe is having a conflict with family, with parents, might be demonstrating resistance capital because they're sharing and standing by something that they really think is important to them. So how can we leverage that? How can we help them understand and navigate? And that can be where the liaison piece comes in too, between the family and the student. So the educator working with the student to understand, like, hey, like, bud, your family cares about you. That's why they don't want you to be a dragon slayer, because they're worried about your safety. So like, let's give them time. Like, what do you want your family to know? Why do you want to be a dragon slayer? And there's actually a real example. So the Institute for Educational Leadership, their keynote speaker 2 years ago shared about a student that wanted to be a race car driver, and the family said, no way. The school said, how? That's not a realistic goal. But then their high school counselor said, well, actually, like, we could make this happen. Like, this could be a real thing. Let's make it a goal. And they were actually able to pair them with partners. So automotive partners, that eventually got them not as a NASCAR driver, but working as an intern in like the NASCAR, doing something with them. So, like, who are we to say that something's impossible? We don't know. Um, if you click. So strategies to start the year, and these are links that you can find on the USB website. There's also your reading that you already completed. All of these links are live, so if you click on them and you get the slides, you'll be able to navigate to those resources. But just strategies to start the school year. If you're looking for ways to talk to families, engage with them, families, friends of knowledge, it's just, what are your values? What are things that we need to know about you, about your student? From the best way to contact you, your preferred method of communication, to like hobbies and interests that you have, because those things can inform the way that we develop lessons, talk to your student, and build that relationship. We just want to get to know you. There's also home or community visits, so you don't have to do them. These are all optional, of course, but if you can, just meeting family again in that neutral space, or giving them back some of that power by meeting in their home where they're more comfortable and feel more empowered. If as a team you all want to complete that self-reflection tool, um, there's just a lot of resources on the Utah Parent Centers. I won't name all of them, but the Utah Parent Center also has a lot of trainings, groups for siblings and different things. But really, it's about shifting a mindset for everyone, looking at their expectations, what everyone brings to the table, looking at families as a complete picture rather than a snapshot. And then looking also at what are the strategies that we're using at our school, and how can we either increase the frequency, and then go beyond those academic conversations, because family engagement, we can have the academic conversations, but that partnership, that trust happens when we ask things about like, hey, you didn't bring your dog today. I don't see your dog in your car. So just noticing, paying attention. And we've all, I think, had a friendship or partnership with someone, where when they mention something that they remember about you, it feels special because it communicates that you care. Families want to be seen, they want to be heard. And then I'm highlighting this question because it just goes back to that indicator 8 parent involvement survey. Question number 3 is consistently the lowest score that we've got in the last 4 to 5 years. I haven't gone past that point. But it's been the lowest one. Question number 3 and question number 12. The frequency of communication is something that keeps coming up in our parent comments as well. I want to hear from my school more. I want to know that they know my kid beyond just academics. I want to know about things that are happening before it becomes a big issue. So increasing frequency with communication, and then supporting learning at home. So creating materials for families to be able to use at home. Families can also volunteer, and they don't always have to come to the school to volunteer. They could create items for you at home. We had a grandma that used to make blankets out of plastic trash bags. That was really cool, and the kids all really liked. Peer mentoring is a huge part as well, and you can find resources on the USB website. It's a mentor model for parents, especially as you're welcoming parents into your school. Setting high expectations. And then we talked about the career day, but also just, I want to, which is so funny that I don't think I've made it explicit in my other presentations, but talking about these regional literacy nights, oral storytelling is something that most of our families do. I know my family did it a lot. So highlighting for them how they are engaging in like literacy, and even history, because for me, the Civil War in El Salvador, that's a part of history. So highlighting for them, you are doing these academic things. We're just maybe not calling them that. So highlighting that for them as well, and having them share their experiences with their students, but also with you as far as, what makes them nervous maybe about coming on campus. Corporal punishment is still legal in quite a few of our states in the United States. It wasn't illegal until I think 2019 in Utah. I know when I moved here, it was just highly discouraged. I moved to Utah in 2014, and I thought that that was surprising that we could still legally slot the kid. But those are the experiences that are some of our families are bringing, especially maybe, and I'll use Spanish speaking families, corporal punishment and being held back for 3 years in first grade. being labeled as having a disability because they spoke Spanish, no testing, no reason other than you speak Spanish. The Mendez versus Westminster case, you all can look into that if you want to. But because of that, a lot of families didn't pass down their language to their kids. It was a protective measure. And so families are still passing down those stories and they're still weary of coming into this space. Not because any one of us did anything, but just everyone wants to protect their kids. It's the same reason that we're afraid of like spiders and snakes. So we have learned somewhere they're dangerous. So now I'm nervous about being around them. Nothing personal, but how can we rebuild that relationship and reframe and reshape what they know about schools or think that they know about schools so that they feel more comfortable talking to us? Additional barriers, resources, so time, transportation, just mental capacity. I'm in the doctorate program and working, and there are many times where I'm like, I really wish I could just drop out of this doctorate program because I'm done for the day. All my think power has left my body. So just freeing up people's mental capacity as well. Environment. So sometimes we have families that, especially if they don't have that transportation, walking to an event or walking their kids to school in the morning, if there's no street lights, that's a threat to their safety. Most car accidents that involve a pedestrian actually happen during daylight savings time. So that's, that's a fact. And so families maybe don't want to risk leaving their house when it's still dark. So potentially impacting attendance and just overall engagement. Also social for some families, they might not know that they are welcomed or that they're expected to participate. So that explicit and personal invitation to participate. And then also access, even working at USBE, sometimes the language is heavy. On Friday at a 3:00 meeting, and I am checked out and I don't know what's going on anymore. It actually happened my first year here where I read an email on Friday. It was in English. I speak English. I did not know what it said. I came back on Monday and I read it again and it made perfect sense. But Friday just tapped out, could not understand. My comprehension was done for the week. So how can we make sure that we are being aware of mental capacity, jargon, and those physical barriers to participation as well? 318, I'm going to go extra fast. I think this is the last one. So just a model, if you all look at the Leap Academy University School, they are a great example, in my mind, a great model of family engagement when it comes to that post-secondary, 100% graduation rate, 100% college placement. But they have a few things, not as expectations as in they're mandatory, but expectations as in this is what you should do, what we would like you to do when it comes to engagement, but there is no consequence if they're not able to do it. So it's 40 volunteer hours during the school year. If you can do that, great. That's our goal. We're going to aspire to do it. If you can't, that's fine. But they let any family member participate. So it doesn't have to be the parent. It doesn't fall back just on mom and dad or just one of those. If it's a single parent household, it could be a sibling, aunt, cousin, whoever. It's on their schedule. They track their hours. But then also having those parent-specific workshops with dinner and childcare provided. The community experts come in and present. So remember, cultural brokers, people that are already at your school, that are already participating. And then alumni as well are present. And then they also don't just keep these events to their school. They're open to the community because their mindset is what strengthens our community is going to strengthen our school. Because if they're not our students now or have students here, they might in the future. And then they've also hired parents, and this goes with Esperanza Charter School in West Valley actually did this as well, where they would hire parents as paraprofessionals, and then they would train them up to be teachers, potentially if they wanted to. And then families just bring in other families, and they just a comprehensive support and inclusion of all the voices at the table. All right, so it's 3:20. Do we have any questions?
Oh, there's nothing in the chat at the moment, but I think we're small enough that if folks want to unmute, go for it.
too stunned to speak. It was that good.
A question. I like the idea from the previous slide, parents getting involved, volunteering and stuff like that. Do you know of any school that has done something like that here in Utah?
Yeah, so there's quite a few, and I didn't put this on my positionality statement, but I have ADHD and PTSD, which impacts my memory. So names are hard. But right off the top of my head, because I worked here, Dual Immersion Academy has parents come in and volunteer. And then they had actually, I don't know if they still did, but they had opened up their school Saturdays for like meetings if the community wanted to host meetings there. And then there's quite a few different schools all over that use that parent volunteer. I don't know if anyone has it to in that model where parents are taking over like 40 hours potentially to volunteer. There's a school in Utah County where the parent liaison actually got hired because they were doing such a great job monitoring hallways, making sure kids were where they're supposed to be after school because they were having some issues there. And then if you email me, I can get you some examples from Utah. I am just blanking at the moment on their actual names.
Not a problem. Then also, not being in administration, I don't know where funds could come from to support, like, that child care meals, right? To bring in families and do things like that. Do you know if there's grants?
There are quite a few grants, or there were. Things are changing and funds are currently limited at the federal level. At the state, we're currently not running any grants through USBE, but you could look at Office of Child Care. They usually have a lot. Department of Workforce Services also has some grant options that open up typically in the spring. So those are some potential options. And then also title programs have family engagement components. So depending on what the workshop is, the intention, you could use some of those funds as well.
Thank you.
Yeah. Val Murdoch would be, when it comes to title funding, would be my person to reach out to first. 21st Century Funding is also they've been funded through the next year, McKinney-Vento. So Val Murdoch would be the person, and then she can send you, they're all on her team, so she can point you in the best direction.
There's a comment.
I just wanted to, I just wanted to add to that, that our school, I'm at a charter school, we're doing that, where we have parents volunteer for 40 hours during the school year. So, and it works great. We love it. I'm not an admin, so I don't know where the funding is coming from for the dinner, like a parent event. We have a parent event in the but we love it. It really gets parents to participate.
Thank you. And APA, so is that American Prep?
Yes, it is.
Perfect. Thank you.
So Susie Brandy put a comment in the chat. She said, I know at our elementary, they have implemented grandparent volunteers. I really like this as it gives both sides meaningful purpose and have connected the younger generations with the older ones. That's kind of a neat idea because, a lot of times grandparents have more time on their hands, right, than parents.
Yeah, that intergenerational model really goes a long way. So that's why the language shift. Legally, we use parent because that's what's in code. But really, family engagement, looking at that comprehensive picture. And then also just culturally for some like refugee families or Spanish speaking families, there's multi-generational homes. So grandparents play a really big role in those homes. I mean, in all families, I'm sure, but they just happen to live there often. The Oakland Reach model is someone to look at too when you're looking for models. New Jersey also has some really great family engagement examples beyond the LEAP program, Connecticut as well. It's so funny that I remember every state except for ours, and ours is doing an amazing job at family engagement. Ohio also has some great trainings as well. I also put up the QR code for a follow-up survey. If y'all could do that. That doesn't mean this is over. It just means please fill it out. But I'm still here for questions if you all want to. There was an activity that you can do on your own because we only have 5 minutes, but it was this. So setting clear and meaningful goals. This goes with street data. So when it comes to family engagement, sometimes the data that you have might be that anecdotal data, um, and it's still meaningful data. So how to use that, how to collect it to inform your goals and strategies going forward.
Susie, I am from Wasatch, and we're kind of still in that rural district. Do you have resources that we could provide parents for like outside of Wasatch, like just community based? I know some parents work in Salt Lake, and so they always are looking for ways that they can connect. Like we try to connect them with the resources we have here in Wasatch, but we're also still kind of that small community, and I don't feel like we have as many resources as like Salt Lake City or even Provo. And just resources that we can provide parents kind of in that outreach.
Yeah, if you email me, I can send you a few resources. We're actually putting a resource sheet together, but we also have a bunch of websites that have already done that. So if you can just email me, I can send you that list. And then also, I did want to highlight something. I didn't grow up in a rural community, but something that I envy about rural communities is that there might not be like a lot of nonprofits, but you all have a lot of resources like in your people. I don't think I've ever seen like people so well connected and willing to support each other. I live in West Valley and I don't know my neighbors' names, but I could say, um, like, do you know Bob? And people will all know who I'm talking about because of that connection. So I'm really jealous about that rural piece, Holly.
Yes, I know it's fun to have like the community, but some of those, yeah, the nonprofit things where parents really need some, assistive living and transportation. It's still like very, we're still very in that infancy stage of trying to have those resources here in Heber. So.
Yeah, I'm putting my email in the chat. If you can email me,
Okay, perfect. That's good. Yes. And it is good because we know each other and we can support. And so you always just want to like help parents because you know how much they're struggling and you just, yeah, trying to find ways to support. Thank you.
No problem. A cool story I heard really fast is people were snowed in and the teacher knew exactly where the student lived and partner teacher was able to take over while the teacher went and picked up the kid so that they could go to school. I don't know a lot of places where that would happen, but it happened in a rural community. So just I'm gonna keep bragging and being jealous about that.
Yes, thank you. It was very informative, so thank you for today. I'm sorry, my camera wasn't working. I'm like having internet issues, so.
It's okay.
But yeah.
Well, I did put my email in the link and then QR survey. Here's my email again. Phone number is on there, but I will say the phone is not the best option because I can't respond as quickly as email. Email I can respond to if I'm in a meeting. Phone will have to wait. And today was back-to-back meetings, so it would have been a longer waiting period. Well, thank you all. And then Deanna, I don't know if there's something else you want to add.